Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our 7th week of Power of Print 2024. Wonderful to be with you all. In particular this week, for those that know me, I'm an absolute research nerd. For those that don't know me, my name is Kelly Northwood. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Visual Media Association, the peak industry body for paper, print, mail, packaging, publishing and distribution. This, as I said, is our 7th Power of Print or P.o.P webinar series, and we are very excited to have continued to build knowledge, awareness across a variety of issues, from cybersecurity to sustainability and the credentials of sustainable practices across the paper and print and signage industries. We have explored mental health, and we continue to explore the effectiveness of print. Today we'll be exploring a focus on research across print media and the role it plays with consumers. None of this could occur, of course, without our two key sponsors and sponsor partners, not just across Power of Print, but across everything that we do. They are true industry partners, Ricoh and Media Super. We have a great team that puts all of these weeks together for us. There's a lot of content, of course, with not only the speakers, but also the class notes, and all of that, that time, resource, energy, effort is really appreciatively supported by Ricoh and Media Super, who are committed to ensuring our businesses have the best business tools and the best awareness, knowledge and information to ensure their businesses are successful. This week is week 7. It's the session that's called Print That Speaks, the Feel of Printed Media. We have over 100 people registered, which is terrific. I know not everyone attends live to these, but for those that are attending live, welcome. You will be a bit of housekeeping. You will be muted, and there is a Q&A at the end of this session. You can write your questions throughout the presentation. Sometimes when people are speaking, that's when the question pops up, and at the end, we don't often remember the same questions, so pop them in as you write them, and I'll facilitate the Q&A at the end. I've got a few questions already prepped and ready to go, and I know a few of you also like to text me during the session. So whichever suits you, write it into the chat via the webinar tool, or SMS through, and I will be sure to ask our keynote speaker. Our keynote speaker is Rebekah Yock. She has 23 years experience as a qualitative researcher in New Zealand, the UK and Australia. Rebekah has worked with Sainsbury's, Unilever and Boots in the UK, the Victorian Government, CUB, Bunnings, Big W and Woolworths in Australia. When we think about those brands in Australia, with the Victorian Government, CUB, Bunnings, Big W and Woolworths, 33% of print comes from the retail sector. So understanding what the retail consumers and what even our retail customers view and think about print media and our channels is important for us to know when we're communicating with our customers, but also important for us to know in how we sell print, as it is a media channel. Rebekah will explore some of these with us today and discuss the personality and essence of printed media. Sometimes when we talk about media, a lot of our commercial printers, I'm in signage, they are all media channels when you consider how our customers procure print. It's under a media and marketing budget. So please keep that in mind. The language being used around media actually does represent everything. In fact, we are the Visual Media Association. Rebekah will be taking us through what the research has said about how print inspires and remains one of the most trusted and effective communication channels. We know that the credentials or the characteristics of print, particularly in mail as one of the highest and press newspapers, we are one of the most trusted channels over digital, fake news, cybersecurity, and all of those things. So how can we really make sure that we are presenting our channel, our print media and our visual media in a way that resonates with our customers and our customers' customers? This research will take you on that journey. I also know there's quite a few of you listening who are in the catalogue sector, and you'll understand all of this language as we are well across some of the research and data for customer groups. So with no further ado, I hand over to Rebekah. She's absolute wonderful brains trust, and we are very much looking forward to hearing this, and I'll have some exciting news at the conclusion of the session. Welcome, Rebekah.
Excellent. Thank you, Kelly. And I realised I had one job to do, which was to turn the slides, and I was a bit late on that. So apologies for that. Hopefully I'll do better with my own slides. Here's yeah, I just want to speak a little bit about the feel of printed media, about why printed media is such a fantastic medium and to get messages across to people. I think Kelly kind of introduced me already, but just I'll quickly say it again. I've been a qualitative researcher for 23 years, and I've worked in New Zealand, London in the UK, and internationally, and here in Australia. And I am very passionate about retail. It's one of my big passions, and we do a lot of research for the big retailers in Australia. I've also done a lot of work over the years in media research and specifically in print. I worked for Bauer Media in the UK, and I don't know if I should be embarrassed to say this, but I did a lot of work on FHM and Nuts and Zoo and all those. If anyone's old enough to remember the Lads mags, seems a terrible thing now when I look back on it, but the Lads mags of the 90s. Also did a lot of work on Grazia and Heat magazine back in the day. So I've sort of always worked, I've done a lot of work for print, and also a lot of work, as Kelly said, looking at retailers' catalogues. Matt is also our research partner. So I guess what I wanted to talk about today, when I sort of want to talk about print, now, I don't want, actually, it's interesting, as I was pulling these slides together, I suddenly thought, now, I don't want to attack digital, and I don't want to say that you know, attack other mediums, but then I'm also conscious that when we explore why print's so great, it's quite nice to have that tension and compare it to digital, especially in this day and age. So I'm by no means attacking digital channels, but perhaps using them as a comparison to print. So what I wanted to talk about today is just things that I have gleaned through my 23 years, and more recently talking to people and researching retailers' catalogues, and also just researching print and print media with people. Is the sort of themes I wanted to touch on today was print as an antidote to digital fatigue, print as a medium that gives us instant gratification, print as a medium that just is pleasurable, print that can take us out of our comfort zones, and also print is a more inclusive medium. So they're the themes that I want to touch on today, and please write down questions as you go. There's a lot in my head. Sometimes I don't know what I know or what I don't know, I suppose. So do feel free to ask questions at the end. So what I want to start off, and this first theme is something I'm going to start. Look, it feels funny to talk about print, and now I'm putting memes on, which are very much a digital. I put these memes up actually because I like a meme, and also because it kind of helps sort of set the tone for some of what I'm going to say about digital fatigue. I don't know if you can relate. I can absolutely relate. In fact, that happens to me nearly on a regular daily basis. I have a real problem with passwords. I just wish people would perhaps just scan my eyeballs. But anyway, that's me. But also just that it doesn't take you long to see memes where people are talking about just that sense of screen fatigue and scrolling fatigue and just a general exhaustion about how much they're doing digitally. And I think it's a great space for print to kind of leverage that general fatigue. So many people are tired, and this is definitely coming through with our younger millennials and Gen Alpha. So that's anyone sort of, 18 up or 25 to 35. They're tired of relying on their phones, and it's exhausting always being on. And there's a lot of talk at the moment, and Kelly mentioned it earlier, I think, about mental health. And I think the anxiety and the stress and the pressure of always feeling like we need to be on, we need to be contactable, we need to be in some sort of zone, and we can't just be. And I think people are starting to get tired, and there is a backlash to this idea of just always having your phone with you. It's interesting. I do a lot of research with people, and I'm out and about with people in stores and shops, and often I'll say to someone, oh, have you got the app? You know, because clients do like to obviously test apps and work through their apps and push people onto the apps. Sometimes it's quite interesting because I'll be having a conversation with somebody and I'll say, you know, oh, have you got the app? No, I don't have that app. No, I don't have that app. And then you go, okay, fine, fair enough. And then you have a look, can I have a look at your phone? And as you look at their phone, you see they absolutely do have that app. They have at some point downloaded that app, but they just don't know what they've got and they can't remember. And also I'll often talk to people about apps and using brands apps. And I'll sort of suggest, oh, do you want to get the app? And they'll go, no, I literally do not want another app. I am cutting back on the apps. I don't want an app. So I think that's also quite interesting, is that people just are getting sick of the apps, or they don't even know what apps they've got. Also, people are missing. I often talk to people who are big users of brands, and I'll often say to them, oh, did you see that? Or did you know about that? Or did you know about that offer? Or did you get that email? And people don't get it. And you're thinking, I'm sure you got that email. You definitely would have got that email, but they have no memory or recall of it. So I think there's a lot that's being missed. And I also don't think people are particularly good at filing anything that they get digitally. And so I think this does come back to a lot of fatigue. And you hear about people wanting to do digital detoxes, they're wanting to cut back, and they're looking for reasons not to use their phone. And they don't want to just be picking up their phones all the time. And so what people are doing is, as I said, they're actively trying to reduce the amount of apps that they have. They're sort of, no, I'm not getting the app because I don't want another app. It's almost like a closet full of apps or something. So their phones can become these sort of app graveyards. They're embracing dumb phones. Now, this is a sort of niche movement amongst younger people in America and a bit more in Australia, but there is this push of let's all get our Nokia, is it 310? I can't remember. Let's get our Nokias back again, or let's embrace dumb phones. We know that vinyl has made a massive comeback compared to digital. Obviously, digital is still the biggest, but the sales of vinyl in 2023 up 14% to 42 million in Australia, and that doesn't include second-hand records, of which there's a huge industry in second-hand and collectors. So that's $42 million, and that's coming from younger people buying Taylor Swift on vinyl, buying some of the big artists on vinyl. And if you look at a store like JB Hi-Fi, they've now got quite an impressive vinyl collection, so it's coming back into mainstream use. And going back to film cameras, I was talking to someone at a film processing shop recently, and I said, oh, you've got a lot of old film cameras. He said, oh, we're finding with young people is it's a real trend. He was a bit of a boffin, and he was questioning the types of cameras they were buying, but they were just buying the old things we would have had back in the 90s to take on a holiday. So nothing necessarily fancy, but it was for that wanting to wait, get their film processed, and go back to a more analog position. So I think print is not a screen, and it gives our eyes and it gives our brains a break. And increasingly, as there's more and more media about the negative effects of digital, the negative effects of screens, not only on our eyesight, but on our concentration as a way of creating anxiety, then I think it's an interesting place for print to be. Print is frictionless. Now, is that the right word? I don't know. I think it's just interesting. I'll tell a little personal anecdote actually in this, and it's something I've seen played out for other people too. When I talk to them in research, I was at a swimming pool the other day and trying to think about being fit, and I'd gone taking the kids for a swim, and I said, as I was leaving the pool, I said, oh, do you have I'm so maybe I said, do you have a flyer or something that's got lists of when you do sort of adult swim squads, or I feel like I need someone to push me along a bit. Have you got a list of all the different classes or of any swim clubs that you have at the pool? And I just had this moment where I was there. I thought, yeah, I'll see it. I'm going to change my life. I'm going to get fit again, whatever. I just wanted in that moment to have something in my hand to see what I could do. And it was a moment. It was an impulsive thought, but something I wanted to act on in that moment. And they said, no, sorry, but you can go. We don't have anything printed here at the pool. You can go on to the website and you can download and see when all the classes are. And there was an instant part of it was like, ugh. That moment, all I wanted in that moment was something so I could instantly see what I could do. And now I had to go home, get the laptop out, log on, find this. And suddenly that moment was lost. And it got me thinking that sometimes people just want to know when they want to know. And there's an element where there's this frictionless to having something in your hand or picking something up. And whereas sometimes with digital, there's just, and it goes back to this idea I said earlier with this remembering a password. You've logged into something and then you go back to the site, and you don't remember your password, and then you've got to send you an email, and then you've got to reset your password. And suddenly before you're sort of off it then, the moment's passed, and often people just drop out at that point. And it's an interesting one that accessing information can feel like hard work for you. And I talk to people about loyalty schemes a lot, and I talk to them about, oh, are you doing this and are you doing that to get your loyalty? And I find sometimes people are now saying to me, can't you just give me the discount? Do I have to do the work? Why do I have to do the work? I can't be bothered. Just make it come to me. And it's a little bit like brands leading people to digital solutions sometimes. It's like, I just want the information now, and I don't want to do the work. I don't want to take a picture of a QR code. You know, I want to have that information right now when I want it, and I want the information to come to us. And it's an interesting one, because you often talk to people about, you know, over the years, talk to people about recipe cards and doing things digitally or not doing them digitally. And sometimes people just want to have it in their hand, or they want to keep it in the kitchen drawer, or they want that takeaway menu in the kitchen drawer, or they want to keep it on the fridge. And not everybody, you know, not everybody, because people sometimes can say that things can clutter, but for a lot of people, it's like having that in my hand is very tangible, getting what I want right now and not having to go away and remember a password or take a photo of a QR code. So I thought that was an interesting example of how print can be very frictionless for people. And again, we're very fatigued at the moment. People are generally feeling really tired at the moment and really fatigued. Part of that is digital, but part of it is the cost of living. So I talked to a lot of people about the cost of living crisis at the moment, and people are generally tired because every element of their life now is spent trying to work out how to be more mindful and to make their money go further. And for certain people in our society, they've not had to think about that before. So I think that in general, people are tired and they're wanting things to come to them and to be a little bit easier. And I think print can do that in a way that sometimes digital can't for them. Print is more associated with pleasure. Now, this might be a slightly controversial thing to say, because we know that people like to lie on their phone and they like to scroll, or they like to sit on the couch with their laptop, and absolutely they do. And that is true. But there is something over the years, as I've talked to people about printed catalogues and about versus digital catalogues and things like that, people have often, and this is obviously particularly true for people who work in offices, people who work on a computer, so I guess white collar workers more, but there's often, you know, for people there, I'm on a screen for work. I'm sitting in back-to-back meetings all day long. So back to that meme that I put up at the beginning. I'm checking my work emails on my phone. So for a lot of people, the mental space of a screen is associated with work. So when it comes to things they want to do in their pleasure, or then they want to, you know, print is associated with, when you think about it, if I said to you print media, sometimes you're thinking it's a magazine on holiday. It's that luxury of reading a book curled up in a chair. It's got a very warm emotional energy and feeling to it. And so that is what people are associating it with. So for a lot of people, screens can be associated with work and with more stress. So sometimes when I talk to people who prefer printed media over digital, they say, I don't want to look at a screen. I want to sit down, and this is especially often true for catalogues. I want to sit down, I want to make a cup of coffee, sit in a comfy chair, and just have a little bit of downtime flicking through the pages and just enjoying it and being open to that moment in a way that they don't necessarily want to do looking at it on a phone on the way to work, or sitting at a desk, or pulling out their laptop. So there is something about the pleasurable act of indulging in print media and reading a magazine and flicking through the catalogue that people really like. And also, again, there's an element where printed catalogues can be a real treat. You know, people aren't necessarily subscribing and buying as many magazines. And again, you know, cost of living crisis, it's a lot. It's a real indulgence for a lot of people to be actually, you know, buying printed media. So to be getting a really visual, really lovely catalogue in the letterbox, or to be getting that free magazine at the supermarket, is a really amazing gift, and it's a treat, and you've been given this thing, and it's, or your Priceline catalogue with all the lovely pictures and all the things that you can indulge. You can just sit back and really window shop. And I think that is something that's really lovely about printed media. And I think a question, I guess, is that are we then more receptive to being really inspired by things, or really open to decisions or changing things when we're feeling in that state of being really relaxed? Here's another one that I quite like to think about with print, is that print takes you out of your comfort zone, and print can give you something you didn't know you wanted, but you quite like. So it's interesting, you know, online shopping, it sort of knows what we like and it knows what's on our list, and it's very convenient. You know, we get suggestions on what to buy, whether that be Facebook ads or whether that be on Instagram, or it's all based on what we've bought in the past. Algorithms are so sophisticated. We follow people on TikTok and Instagram based on what we like, and then we get more suggestions based on what we like. And we all know that there's that feeling that we're all in an echo chamber with media, and we're just getting reflected our beliefs back to us again. And on one hand, personalization is great and people like personalization, but it also doesn't feel too personalized. And is there the sense that there's no element of surprise in that, you know, a sense that we're just getting given what we already know? And that's great, but there's not a lot, you know, impulse. Where is the impulse? And I think what's interesting about potentially catalogues and printed catalogues is that you're flicking through and you see something and you didn't know that you wanted it, or you didn't know what it was and you didn't know. And I think that's quite exciting, and that can really break us out of an inertia and really surprise and delight. I talk quite a lot in retail about surprise and delight, because I think that's that moment when you're walking around a store and I used to call it, when I worked and did work for IKEA, is that it's the pink plastic whisk analogy. Like, I didn't really need it and I didn't know I wanted it, but I bought it and it wasn't too expensive and it's given me a massive spring in my step. And I think it's that sense that being surprised or delighted can add joy. And I had a story of talking to someone about catalogues, and they were reading a catalogue, flicking through a supermarket catalogue, and they just saw a beautiful visual of I don't know, it was cheese and crackers and a little charcuterie board, and this was a sort of a gentleman who was fairly sort of stoic, and he lived on his own, and he was pretty frugal, and he bought, you know, similar things every week, and he saw that, I hadn't even thought about that kind of food for a long time, but that picture made it look so delicious. And look, he wasn't going to go out and buy a food magazine to see that, you know, but he'd found it in the catalogue, and he put himself out of his comfort zone, and he went and bought it, and he lived alone, and he sat there and he had his cheese and crackers, and what a treat, you know, what a bit of fun. It was something I didn't know I wanted until I had it. And I think it's those moments of joy and surprise that we can get from print that we can't necessarily get if we're only ever buying things that we already buy. And that's that sense that we could open us up to a little bit of surprise and delight, and to try something new. So I think that there's something nice about the fact that, and this is probably especially true for catalogues, but also for magazines, you know, having this curated read, having someone else curate for us is quite nice, because we can learn something we didn't know, we can try something new. And I think that's the real beauty of having a magazine, or having a printed catalogue, or having a printed magazine, is that we can find out something that we didn't know we wanted until we got it. I think the final theme that I want to talk about today is this idea of print being inclusive. And I think Kelly also talked about it being trustworthy. I do work for the government, and we talk to so many different people across all of Victoria and Australia. And I think, you know, people that are more vulnerable, people that are more mistrustful, people that have had trauma in their lives, people who just don't have the means to be a digital native. You know, I mean, we can't forget, and especially in this current climate, that it can cost money, that you know, it can cost money to be online, it costs money to have the technology. We hear a lot about online scams, especially vulnerable people feel very nervous about that. They have limited mobile data, or they don't want to use their data when they're out and about, you know, to find out information, because there's no free Wi-Fi in the mall, or it doesn't work, or I can't afford to use my own data to use my phone when I'm out and about. So I think, and sometimes people can feel forced into a sort of a digital solution when they don't want to be. And I think that in that way, print can be so inclusive, because it can speak to everybody, no matter who you are, no matter how much money you have, no matter what your age. And I thought that these were two kind of interesting examples on the other side. So there was something that came up actually on a site I belong to, and it was talking about somebody who was talking about McDonald's coffee cards actually, and somebody who had saved them all up and they couldn't use them or something. And it was interesting, because all the comments when people were talking about printed coffee cards that McDonald's would give to people, or printed coffee cards in general, said, oh, it's a shame it's all on the app now, because I used to take my coffee card and I didn't want the free coffee and I would give it to homeless people, or I would save it up and give it to my local homeless person, or I would just give them away to people. And there was this sense of community and kind of togetherness that came from having something tangible in your hand that you could give to somebody else who needed it. And there were quite a few comments, and I just thought it was an interesting thing because it came up this week when I was thinking about talking to you. It was just interesting that people were, you know, that's a shame. And now it's on the app, I can't do that anymore. I can't feel like I can help other people out with these things, these coffee cards that I used to get. And I don't know if McDonald's wanted you giving them to everybody, but I thought it was a nice story about the inclusivity of print. Another story, and I often, you know, it's as I say, I talk to people of all different ages, and it's really the amount of grandparents I talk to who when the catalogues come out, especially around Christmas time, you know, they like that there's something tangible, and the grandkids come round and and they don't know what the latest toy is. You know, they're all a bit confused, but they just want to please their grandparents, their grandkids. So there's so many of them that I speak to who go, and it's a sort of occasion, and it's something that they like to do, that they'll give the catalogue to their grandchildren to circle what they want. And it's a moment they have together, and they sit down, and obviously probably the grandchildren circle practically everything in the catalogue, but you know, it gives them a sense of what's out there, what their kids like. And I think stories like that are so heartwarming, and I speak to a lot of people who love a printed catalogue for that reason, that they can sit there and they can enjoy it, or they can, you know, or magazines that get passed around to different family members and you drop over your old magazines to your neighbour, or all that lovely inclusiveness that print can do in such a nice, warm, generous way. So it can be more accessible for everyone. Now, I think I've whistle stopped. I do speak quickly because I blame that on being a New Zealander. So hopefully that's given you a bit of a taste of how I see, based on the people I talk to, the power of print and the power of printed media. So yes, thank you. And I guess I might hand it on to London, who might have some questions.
I'm going to have some questions. I can't help myself. Hello again, everybody. Thank you, Rebekah. I can listen to people talk about the power of print and the role print plays forever. I think sometimes being in the industry for now 20-something years, I do. You feel sometimes you're constantly defending. We're not the newest kid, shiny toy in the room, and sometimes digital can take that thunder from us. But I really do enjoy this cycle that's coming back and the role that print is playing. Not only are we seeing some growth in marketing investment across print, but also just seeing some of the innovation across signage also coming into print. So when you say things like surprise and delight and warm and generous, I feel someone's finally singing from the same hymn sheet, so I really appreciate that. I want to talk a little bit about the sensory nature of print. You know, there's so much innovation around, you know, chocolate smelling Easter catalogues. Starbucks did loyalty cards that they infused with coffee scent. When you talked about the grandparents giving the catalogues to their grandkids, I know my nephews, they get their toy magazine and they cut out all the things that they want. It's a bit of an activity. Do you think there's a sensory nature that people are engaging with, the tactility of print? I mean, it's physical, isn't it? It's something. People are saying if we do a much more sort of coffee table style periodical, people will keep it. Feels like it's something you don't want to just quickly throw away. Is there a tactile sensory element that you're hearing about, seeing?
Yeah, absolutely, and also very visual. Like I look at the supermarket catalogues, which have got a lot of really lovely pictures in them now. You know, it's not like, and not all catalogues do. Obviously, some are more sort of practical. But I guess it's interesting if you see Coles and Woolworths and Aldi. There's a lot of really nice food photography in there, or Aldi will have like the special buys sort of laid out. And so I think there's something also very visual, like people see with their eyes, and I think they're actually quite inspiring, and it might give you an idea to try something new. So I think visually they can really kind of, there's a really nice emotional engagement there with those kind of products. But I think too there is something about turning the page, and I was reading something about, you know, Kindles and digital books and ebooks, and how there's something about having that book in your hand because you know where you are. And I think spatially, not everybody can also understand, okay, I've got 40 pages left, but where's that sense of achievement that I'm halfway through a big book? Or I think that's hard. I think it's always going to be a struggle with digital books, for example, that you can't necessarily see where you're at. But I think there is something about that sense of just the sound of the paper and turning the pages. And people are it's interesting when you talk to people. When I first started doing catalogue research with people, I remember thinking, are they going to fill an hour and a half talking about this? And this is sort of pre-COVID, and we do face-to-face groups, and we'd sit there and throw all these catalogues from all different retailers out on the table, and just people loved it, and people had so much to say, and people would be very particular about the feel of the paper or the sound of the paper or the thickness of the paper and all that stuff. They probably didn't know that they'd noticed until I sort of forced them to think about it, but they absolutely had noticed it because they all had an opinion on that. So I think, and the idea of scented things, and didn't we always used to smell certain papers as a kid? I remember there'd be certain books or certain types of paper that would have a different smell. And I think that's really evocative. And I think, yeah, we can't forget that sense of touch and smell, which is missing from digital media. And it's something that only print can really do.
Yeah, I think that interesting to talk about books. When Kindles and things sort of first started, there was a significant decline in book publishing, but they've now enjoyed a double-digit increase in production volumes globally for their third year in a row. And I think books, you do become emotive about the books that you read, the characters, the author, and you want to keep that. You want to keep that book, on your bookshelf. And that's an emotionality of print. And we're seeing a change. We did some groups with younger cohorts, 18 to 25, and we asked them what do they think of digital mail, and they immediately started talking about emails and how many emails they get in there. So whereas in my generation, young and fresh, a little bit older than 25, the junk mail was always something, takeaway flyer or real estate flyer in your letterbox. But the younger cohorts, junk mail is email. So that's an interesting piece for our industry to understand, and we'll talk about what we're going to do next at the end. But do you feel that print, it's sort of this quality space, this emotional space that we're learning, and we have different generations are engaging with it in different ways?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. As you were talking, I don't know if this is entirely answering your question, but we do a lot of work with children, and I think it's interesting that parents are so, dare I say it, desperate to try and get children, I guess, away from screens or not into screens too early. And I think there's obviously a real potential when you think about, you go to the museum and there's a leaflet in there for the kids to fill in or things to find around the store, or I think there's something also really powerful. If you go into any children's bookshop, what a time to be alive for children's books. Like, it's just out of this world how many amazing children's books there are right now. So I think also for that cohort, I think parents of small children, and as parents of children, probably primary school particularly, just really want to get printed media into their children's hands. So I think that's quite important too for kids. I think that cohort are probably really anything because they have so much fear around screens for their children. But I do agree that junk mail and that's that point that I just don't know how, I think so much is getting missed when people get things emailed to them. And I don't think people know how to file it, and I don't think they're reading it. And I think it's that idea of the digital fatigue again. I think people are missing a lot of stuff that's coming into their inbox.
And it's a matter of, you might click and then delete. It's not just about whether you get it. I mean, that's what's great about EDMs. You can blast tens of thousands quickly. It's whether you actually engaging, digesting, consuming. And that's sort of sometimes the difference of the power of print can be really from an acquisitional funnel. It can be very quick to engage. And I think when you're talking about the kids, there was a wonderful campaign that OPSM ran, and they printed essentially a storybook, but the book, when you read it with your child, it had all these different treatments to essentially it was essentially giving your child an eye test, and what they were reading and showing you was basically if they read something, then at the end you would take that into the OPSM, and the OPSM could explain, all right, we need to test for this or test for that, which was a really clever way of using print, I think, in really engaging. And obviously there's a eyesight connection. Woolworths, one of their most successful campaigns was when they did the Seed Diaries with Jamie Oliver partnership, and they basically, you got little seeds, you collected seeds every time you went into the shop. It was all paper-based and none of those little plastic things that we then had to work out where we're going to recycle them. But it was really about fruit and vegetables and growing fruit, smelling what a carrot smells like, all these different things infused in print. So there's so much creativity, and I always say our imagination across print is only limited by our, the innovation of print is only limited by our own imaginations. But what I'm also liking, and I don't know if this is coming through in the consumer market, but we're seeing more now brands, and this has come with moving from plastic bags to, getting rid of single-use plastics. McDonald's has moved from plastic straws to paper straws. There appears to be a better understanding now of the environmental credentials of paper. Are you hearing consumers wanting to be more active in their sustainable procurement decisions? Are you hearing that packaging and all of those sorts of things and are coming to the fore, and therefore, does print have a role to play there?
Yeah, people don't like packaging as a rule, and it's often the first thing when you talk to people that they will say. And I think it's because packaging is, unsustainable packaging. I think it's because it's a tangible thing. I think sometimes when you talk about environmental concerns with people, it's very hard for them to understand CO2, but it's kind of easier for them to understand whether something came in paper or plastic. And so I think that people are very aware of that, and because they see their and put their recycling bins out every night. So I think people are attuned to plastic as the bad guy when it comes to packaging. But to your point, I think packaging is also super important. And just back on that, the kids thing, I think kids want, there's something very tangible, I think, as well, about having something in your hand. And it was interesting. My son had to go back to school and say what he did in the holidays, and they wanted some sort of scrapbook of all the things that they'd done. And it's interesting because you think, well, did that trip to the museum, did I get a printed ticket? When we went to and you start, and did we get an actual movie ticket to show we went to Kung Fu Panda 4? So I actually think there's something so magical about having those tangible things in your hand for a kid. You can scrapbook your holiday, and because school actually asked for them. They wanted to see that, and you're like, so much is getting emailed that there's that sort of, did it even happen? Do I have a little sort of memento of that trip that I did to put on my notice board or whatever? So I think, so I am digressing away from your point about packaging, sorry, Kelly, but I just thought there is something so nice and tangible about having that. And I guess I also talk to tweens quite a lot, and I think tweens, and again, obviously sustainable packaging, but I think tweens love that, They love to get something and they'll keep it and they'll put other things in it. And I think there's something quite nice about that for kids.
Yeah, and I think it's not an anti-digital. I'm omni-channel in as much as every other marketer and brand person is out there. We need to use all channels, and print needs to be very clear in where it sits. And I think fibre-based packaging is a lane it can own. It ticks all of the APCO draft across the environment, the sustainable regulations. We have catalogues can be recycled in the household recycling waste. In fact, some catalogues are now being produced on compostable papers and newsprint papers. Magazines are now moving away from the seller's sheen front covers and using different papers to make them 100% recyclable. Newspapers also. So, we're sort of looking at how we can get rid of those plastic wraps of the newspapers and using a compostable plastic. And I think I think print has a really great sort of opportunity to nail that space, because consumers are, we did a survey last year, 43% said that they would spend more money on a more sustainably packaged product. Now that's huge, for our industry. We do print on plastics, we do print on PVCs, we do print on signage and labels and and so forth. But there are also bamboo solutions. There's a lot of solutions coming in that space. But the large majority of print is still on a fibre-based or paper solution. And I love that we can now get that story out. I was in Coles recently, and just my daughter was making these baking, and I had to buy these chocolate buttons, and wham bam on the front of the packaging, which was a paper rather than the old plastic packaging for the chocolate buttons, it said, "I'm paper, you can recycle me." And that, you know, I've been promoting the environmental credentials of paper for 14 years, and it's been a very hard slog, but it's such a lovely sell because people seem to finally be getting it, which is really terrific.
I think people also find it more premium.
Sorry.
I think people find paper packaging more premium as well. You know, so they feel like the product is better quality, or as soon as you put something in paper, I think people start to think it's better for you, it's better quality, it's a more discerning product often.
I think that's the point about some of the coffee table books or periodicals are doing a different bindery or a much more upmarket. Print does carry a stronger weight of, I don't want to throw that, it's physical. If I throw it, it feels like a waste to throw it out. The physicality of it, I think, particularly when we do start going into embellishments and more quality print finishes, whereas an email, I just scroll down. I mean, I've got multiple email addresses. One is where I put all the sort of ads and things to it, but just delete without question from an email, whereas print does carry some weight as well.
Yeah.
The quality, trustworthiness, they're nice connectors. Like a book, you don't necessarily throw a book in the bin. You might take it to Vinnie's or somewhere like that. But to throw a book you've read in the bin is far more unusual, I would suspect.
Yes, definitely.
The other thing you mentioned about inclusivity, we lobbied pretty hard when during the Voice referendum, the government was wanting to put all communications 100% digital. We lobbied very hard and very pleased that decision was amended, because not only it was an erroneous decision, it wasn't the best decision, but you made a point which is absolutely correct. Everyone can get access to printed product, as opposed to not everyone gets as equal access to digital. We've got regional accessibility, cost of living, people reading things off their phone as opposed to internet connectivity. The societal balance, do you want to touch on that a little bit more? Just trying to understand, are we missing people when if we just rule out print?
Oh, absolutely. And we as I say, we do work with people in remote areas, and you're absolutely right. There are connectivity issues. Absolutely with that. And we did some work on recently, just sort of people with emergency information, and fire risk areas, and that absolutely was printed so people could hold on to it, and fact sheets that they could hold on to, and what to do in an emergency or what to do in the case of a fire or flood. And that absolutely needs to be print, because in those moments, you're not going to be able, you don't know if you're going to be able to access your internet, you don't know if you're going to be able to charge your phone. But also people in remote areas just don't have the same connectivity, and also people don't have great Wi-Fi, or they don't have a good laptop. I mean, it's very easy for us to just assume that everybody has a laptop and fast broadband, but for some people that's just absolutely not something that they have. And also, I think for older people, there's all that fear of being scammed. They always hear stories. They become very nervous, about or even opening an email in case it's some sort of, virus or a scam, or someone's going to ring them up. So having something printed in their hand, absolutely. And then obviously, having translated materials for different audiences, for government kind of communication and things like that people can hand out at churches, or community groups can hand out and give to people. And then and you know what, there's a security in knowing that people have got that. You could tell people all the time to go onto the website and get that health information. I'm talking more for government here, but go onto the website and get the health information. But If you're handing them a flyer or you're handing them some clear information, then you know that they have got that in their hand. You know that they may take that home and read it. There's no guarantee that by telling somebody to go onto a website or to have a look, that they're even going to get on there. So there is a sort of trustworthiness in just knowing that information has got into the right people's hands when it's in print, I think, and especially for government messages or important health messages, I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think we ran a campaign, Keep Me Posted. We still do, and it really deep dived into the societal balance of print. And one of the things that we found was that there was absolute people that were in a lower socioeconomic or more facing more financial difficulties, often didn't have a laptop and household Wi-Fi. They were managing their finances on their smartphone, on their mobiles. And some of the ministers that we spoke to, that we've got facilities at the library, they can go there. And that's when I talk about there is a digital inequality, because how is it an okay position in Australia, as rich culturally, as rich economically, to suggest that you have to go and manage your finances in a public library where we've got cyber issues? We don't, why don't we just send them the bill and not have to charge them for it? That sort of stuff was some of the things that we found in Keep Me Posted.
Absolutely, but also, look, I love libraries more than the next person, and I love everything that they do, but you've still got to be able to get to the library, and for people with mental health issues or severe anxiety, or for people who physically can't, or it's a really hot day, or it's a really rainy day, but you still got to get to a library. You've still got to navigate public transport or navigate getting to a library, and some people aren't leaving the house that much. I've talked to a lot of people who just can't leave their house unless they have assistance. So absolutely, libraries are an amazing resource, but they can't work all the time for every person.
Correct. And then the last thing, I'm just going to wrap up because I've just got my little buzzer, London in the back office texting me, which is brilliant, keeps me on track. The other thing around the Australian Digital Index really found is about digital literacy as opposed to digital ability. And this is something, when we talk about societal balance or the role print plays across the societal balance, there are, and my P.o.P 92, he's done a library course about how to use an iPad, and he is digitally, he has a digital ability. He can turn it on and he can use some apps, and he can turn it off. That is a digital ability as opposed to digital literacy. He would struggle with trying to, download multiple apps. He would struggle with managing his finances on his iPad. He would struggle with any sort of further complex task. And I think when we talk about digital literacy and digital ability, this is more in the transactional print sort of space, transactional mail, bills, statements, government communications, that sort of data-driven communications role that print plays. This is a real strength of print around social balance, societal balance, and the role across society. And I think anyone who is listening from running transactional mail houses or producing transactional print or data-driven communications from government and others, that are understanding these key credentials around the difference between digital ability and digital literacy is really important. So we'll keep getting fact sheets about that, but I thought that was a nice wrap up. The announcement that I wanted to sort of also share with everybody is we have signed up in a partnership with The Source, where Rebekah is one of the directors, and we will be releasing some information about that in the coming weeks. I'm really excited. Unfortunately, we had to sort of pause all research investment across print channels during COVID as we pivoted to focus on HRIR and advocacy across being an essential service. But now that we have rebuilt, re-emerged and shaken off the pandemic, it's really wonderful that we are now able to reinvest in research for our channel. It will be across 4 insights across the year, and we'll give you more information about when they're coming to your state. And we'll have physical events as well as virtual, but also really importantly, some nice, really current research for all of you, all of our members and industry, about the effectiveness and the role print plays, from effectiveness from perhaps a retail perspective or telco, bank, but also the societal balance that we've also touched on. So the next time we hear from Rebekah, we hope we'll be able to talk about some really nice numbers and more really specific examples in addition to what's been discussed today, so we can really further the conversation. So thank you, Rebekah, for today. I appreciate you giving us the start of this conversation, Print That Speaks, and I think we've touched on all the things that I just really look forward to us fleshing out over the next year and beyond. And she's also mastered the IT, which is terrific as well, because it's not easy. It's not easy to be the speaker and the navigator. So thank you.
People's faces. That's always but thank you very much. And yeah, we're really excited about the research. It's going to be fantastic. So thank you.
It will be. I look forward to working with you and Matt. Next week is week 8, our final week, and we have the wonderful David Barron from the Manufacturing Industry Skills Alliance. For those that don't know, I am very honoured to sit on the MESA board. The MESA, or Manufacturing Industry Skills Alliance, is our Jobs and Skills Council. So they are appointed by government, to the federal government, to sit over the top of all of our needs across skills and training. There is a lot of work that we need to do in this space. You have given me a lot of feedback in the surveys last year and the member engagement sessions. It was very clear this is #1 on your list. Some businesses feel greater concern about having limited skilled labour than they do about any other point in their business success. David attended the MESA Strategic Forum last week. The Honourable Minister O'Connor was there and talked a lot about what he is charged with and what he wants the Jobs and Skills Councils as well as industry. The government can't do this on their own, and industry will have a role to play. David will give us an overview of the challenges that we've identified, as well as then perhaps some of the areas that we as an industry can stand together. So I really look forward to bringing David to you next week. So tune in for that if you haven't already registered. There'll also be some additional invitations next week to the Industry Skills Roundtable, so don't miss out on that. Thank you, everybody. I am coming to you live from Fiji, so Bulla, and have a wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing you all back in Melbourne next week. Thanks again, Rebekah, and thank you to the team who's put all of this together today. Take care. Bye.